Now that you've included bootstrap.css in your file, and you've linked to it in your index.html page, let's go ahead and mess around with Bootstrap a little bit. So first, let's just create a div and give it a class of equal to container. Then inside of there, we'll create another div and give it a class of row. And this is actually where we're going to include all of our columns, is right inside of that row. So we can do column MD 4. Close that div and then copy and paste this. Now remember that Bootstrap is a grid system based on a grid of 12. So I did 4 plus 4 plus 4, which equals 12. So if you want a row of 4 columns, you would do 3 and then change this to 3 right here. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 12. Alternatively, you could have 2 columns, which would be 6. You could have 1 column, which would be 12. You have a few different options. You can definitely mix and match as well. So let's go ahead and do 3, and we'll just close this row and close this container. And we'll go ahead and save, just to show you what it looks like when you save this. When we refresh, nothing happens. So let's inspect the element real quick. And we have it in here, except nothing has any kind of height or size. So without a height, we can't actually see any of this stuff. Let's minimize this. I'll give it a class of 1. Again, you can just name it anything that you want to. And then in the head, just so that everything is visible to you guys watching this, I'm going to style it right here. Let's give it a background color too so we can see it really well. Okay, and we have 1 div, 2 divs, 3 divs, 4 divs. And then we also have our row here and our containers wrapping the entire thing. Now really quickly before I move on, there's 2 different types of containers you can use. The one we're just using is called container, and it automatically sets the width at particular heights, like it's 1170 right now for this media query size. And you can see in orange the margins on the left and right. But there's a lot of websites now that have full width images, full width videos, and things like that. So if you want to add those, you just change container to container fluid. And then it takes up the entire width. So now our divs are wider as well. So keep that in mind. The difference between container and container fluid is container has margin on the left and right, whereas container fluid takes up the entire width. So we'll just keep it on container for right now. What we need to do next is actually add content inside of each of these columns. So we can just create another div, class equals, let's go 2, nested, close it, close this one as well. Let's just copy this the entire way down here. Let's actually get rid of this background color as well. Or better yet, let's actually change 1 to 2 nested. So now, this div does not have any styling on it whatsoever. So we go back and we'll refresh, and now all of a sudden we have margin between every one of the columns. So it comes with margin on it as well when you nest elements inside of it. We can also go ahead and let's just mess around here in our developer tools, and we can add margin on it. So let's do margin 0 for top and bottom, and let's go with 100 px for left and right. And it shrinks it a bit. 10 px, 0 px, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So that's how you shrink the columns down. Again, it automatically attaches some margin on it if you keep it at 0. You can even go negative too if you want to get them a little bit closer, so that's just an easy fix for that, is just go negative with your margins as well. Let's really quickly look at what happens when we shrink this page? We'll just go ahead and shrink it down. They shrink with it, and then all of a sudden they're actually blocking into 4 separate divs. So all the divs are still here, they're all just stacked right on top of each other. So why did it choose to do it at that particular width? Well, the reason is because of where we actually put this right here in the middle, this MD or medium. So we could change it to large. And then the divs will actually stack a little bit sooner. So it stacks right there instead. We can go extra large as well. And then it stacks even sooner. So the opposite way would be small, or SM. We can drag it, and then it breaks right there. If you never want it to break, and you never want them to stack on top of each other, you can do extra small. You can drag it all the way and it will never break. You'll notice a lot of times in the examples, especially on getbootstrap.com, that they'll list out a ton of different versions of this. They'll just have, okay, let's have another column that breaks medium here, and it'll be 6, and they'll do another one for large. You really don't have to do it that frequently. That's actually really rare. You normally can just keep one class of these in here, and you should be good to go the entire time. Now I'm just going to quickly delete one here since we do not need it. And let's go ahead and mess around with the offsets a little bit. Now what offset does is it pushes the column away a little bit, either from the left margin, or it could push it away from other columns. So let's change all of these to, say, 1. We'll save it. Let's go take a look and see what happened. So now they're a lot smaller. But let's say I want to space them out a little bit. Well, we do that using the offset. We new column. We can just stick with small. Really, this could be any size you want as well, so long as it breaks at the right point. And let's do 2. Now let's add this really quickly because I don't think this is adding up quite right. So we have 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 8. Plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So it is actually 12, so it definitely works out. That's actually the perfect number that we need. So let's go ahead and refresh. And there we go. So now the one on the left is pushed away from the wall by 2. This one is pushed away from the first one by 2, and so on. Let's mess around with it a little bit more. Let's go with no offset here. Let's go with 4 right here, with 1 right here, and we'll go with 3 right here. Now again, I'm still keeping them added up to 12. You definitely do not have to do that. It's just better to keep it nice and even since it is a 12 grid system. And that's the columns we have right now. You can also mess around with this a little bit more. So let's say we do 3, let's do 2, 2, 2, and 2. If we save it. Now there's something off about this just by a little bit. So it's kind of hard when you try to space out your margin by using offsets. Because here we have 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 8. Plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. Then we have 11. So this isn't actually quite even. It looks like it almost is, but it's really not. There's a little bit more space here on this side for another column. So you definitely want to space it out using margin instead of offsets. But offset's a great way just to kind of push things away from other elements by a little bit. And that's the basics of Twitter Bootstrap. Everything you really need to know to get started. That's really the meat of Twitter Bootstrap. That's the extremely valuable stuff, is the grid system, so you don't have to go in and type in hundreds of lines of media queries. Bootstrap does a lot of that for you already. So I'd recommend going through and practicing this a little bit, create some pages, try editing some pages that you've already created using Bootstrap, see if you can get the column fixed perfectly for exactly how you want to lay it out.